One of the famous Jewish people living in our times was a chassid by the name of Mendel Furtefas. He lived in Russia during Stalinistic times, communist Russia, and he was caught for spreading Yiddishkeit. He was sent to the Gulag, to Siberia for many years. Mendel shared that he decided that if this is happening to him, it's obviously meant for a reason. And therefore any experience, anything he sees or goes through will be there for him to teach him to become a better person. And indeed, when he later left Russia, he shared many of the stories, many of the things that he learned during his period in the Gulag. One of the stories he shared was, one day he was sitting in the cell together with the other inmates, and they were playing cards. But playing cards is forbidden. So the guard came in and said, "Give me those cards." They looked at him like he's a crazy guy. They said, "What cards? We're not playing any cards." He said, "But I heard you." They said, "No cards." He searched all over, couldn't find, so he left. A few minutes later he came back, he looks through the hole, they're playing cards. So the guard is adamant, he barges into the cell. "Give me those cards, I saw you." Again they look at him, they say, "You're imagining." He looks all over, he looks through them, he goes through their pajamas. There's not so much to look in a Russian cell, but he can't find the cards. So he leaves. Half an hour later he comes back again, he looks through the hole, he can't believe it, they're playing cards. This time he says, "I'm going to get them." He comes into the cell furious, "Give me those cards," screaming, shouting. They tell him, "We don't have any cards." So he looks everywhere, but he cannot find the cards. Frustrated, disappointed, and furious, he leaves the cell. Later on, Reb Mendel turns around to the ringleader and he says, "Please explain to me. I've been sitting here all the time. I see you playing the cards, and I see that the cards disappear when the guard comes in. What's the secret? Where do they go?" So the ringleader smiles and he says, "You're a good man. You're a nice Jew. I can trust you. I'll tell you the secret." He says, "You should know. You may be here because Stalin doesn't like you being Jewish, but we're here for other reasons. The bunch of guys that you're sitting in the cell with, we're robbers, pickpocketers, thieves, all kinds of crimes. It's very simple," he tells him. "When the guard comes in, we take the cards and we slip them into the guard's pocket. After the guard's done searching, he's about to leave. The one who's a pickpocketer and is an expert, he pulls the cards out of the guard's pocket and we continue playing." Mendel said that he learned from this an amazing message in serving Hashem, in the way a person should conduct himself. And he said like this, he said, many times there's a problem, there's an issue. The natural tendency of a human being is to blame the problem on somebody else. If there's an issue, it can't be me, it's my spouse, it's my children, it's my colleague, anyone but me. If only he would just do a little bit of introspection, look inside his own pockets, look inside himself, maybe he will be able to solve the problem because he may be the issue. Indeed, we find this exact same thing in this week's Parashat Balak. We read about a man called Balaam, and he's on the way to curse the Jewish people, and he's riding a donkey. And the donkey suddenly swerves off the road because there's an angel standing in front of the donkey. And Balaam is frustrated and upset with the donkey. He blames the donkey, he hits the donkey, and then the donkey crouches eventually, and Balaam is really upset, and he's screaming and shouting and beating this donkey. Eventually the donkey opens its mouth, a miracle happens, and says to Balaam, "Why are you doing this to me? I'm such a faithful donkey, I've never done this. Why don't you stop to think, maybe there's a problem?" And even when the donkey opens its mouth, such a miracle, instead of Balaam saying, "1 second, if such a miracle happened, maybe I need to stop and think for a moment," he says to the donkey, "Because you embarrassed me. If I had a sword, I would have killed you." Again, he's blaming the donkey. With such a miracle, he doesn't notice anything but just himself. He keeps blaming everyone, but not himself. And the Torah tells us this story because the Torah wants us to learn the message, not to be like Balaam. To say to ourselves, if miracles or if signs or big things are happening and they don't normally happen, don't scream, don't shout, don't blame the other person. Maybe what needs fixing is yourself. And indeed, fixing yourself is the greatest thing. That's where our proving strength lies. As the Mishnah tells us, Eizu Gibor HaKovesh et Yitzro. Who is a strong man? Someone who conquers his evil inclination. Or Shlomo HaMelech says, Tov Moshel Berucho Miloched Ir. Somebody who can control his temper is greater than a soldier, a warrior who can conquer an entire city. Because we need to work on ourselves. That's our mission. That's what the Torah wants us to take from this week's Parsha. So let's learn the same message of Mendel in Siberia and in this week's Parashat. Before we're quick to snap at somebody else and blame the whole world, let's do a little bit of introspection first. And then, Zrat Hashem, if we fix ourselves, then we can start thinking of fixing the people around us. Shabbat Shalom.